though, that my favorite day was the day we were in Jerusalem, one of the early days where I had probably one of the most meaningful moments with my father, which was to pray with him at the Kotel. And there's a picture of the two of us from behind, my father shaking hand, reaching up, touching the wall, me too, and we're praying there. And I'll never forget the moment of walking away from the Kotel, meeting my mom. I'm back up a little ways. She was in tears. I mean, I watched my father and I pray together in this holy city and hugging and all that. It was just an emotional day, wonderful day. And when I put my parents to bed at night in the King David Hotel and was about to turn in, the two Israeli Special Forces guys who Abe arranged to be with us, because I debated whether I should take my security with me, and I have security travels with me all the time thanks to death threats and the like, but I figured that the Bloods of the Crips wouldn't follow me to Israel. So I left my security behind. And now these two Special Forces officers, when I'm done for the day, they come up to me and say, "We will go for a ride." and I look at them and I say, "Okay." and they basically put me in the back, in the back of a Jeep, and we drive off. And then we leave the city, and next thing you know, we are into the desert, off-roading. And we get deeper and deeper into the desert, and I notice that the cell phone reception on my phone is now out. And now suddenly, I'm a very secure guy, but I start to really worry and think to myself about these Israeli Special Forces guys. I'm like, I wonder if this is what they do to the Goyim when they get there. Is this what's going to happen to me? And so I'm nervously looking, hoping that I can get reception, wondering why I didn't bring my security with me. And next thing you know, we ascend a beautiful hill. I see the lights of the city. My cell phone reception comes back, and we pull off to the side. And now, out in the distance, I see the valley and another set of mountains, and we get out to set up a campfire. And these guys kind of casually tell me that the mountains I see in the distance is a very important mountain to me, and it's Mount Nebo. Now, many of you will know Mount Nebo. For those of you who don't, we will have a little minion in the corner after this, so I can explain to you a little more Torah. But Mount Nebo is very important in my cultural tradition because it is the mountain that Moses came to and was allowed to see into the promised land. But you all know he could never go there. Now, there is no word in Hebrew. I wish the rabbis didn't leave, because I could ask them, and I should be sure about this. There's no word in Hebrew for coincidence. In God's world, there are no coincidences. And so I suddenly got chills and when he told me it was Mount Nebo, because I immediately put two things together. One was the importance of that mountain in my cultural tradition, and two was the Torah portion for the week. And so I asked him to do something that only you could do in the modern Jewish state. I said, give me your Torah and your iPad. And I took them both, and I said to them, I want you to listen to something. And I pulled up the very last speech given by Martin Luther King hours before he would be assassinated, where he's talked about Mount Nebo. He didn't mention the mountain, but he had said, I have been to the mountaintop, and I have looked over, and I have seen the promised land. And I'm here to tell you that we as a people, we will get to the promised land. Like Moses, he said, I may not get there with you, but my eyes have seen the glory of the coming Lord. This moment in the desert, imagine here in Israel the words of Martin Luther King echoing out to Americans, to Israelis, all of us touched by the profound force of these words. 3 Jews, 1 Christian, all of them united by this vision of this man who spoke to a tradition that goes back centuries. And then I said to them, let me tell you what this week's Torah portion is. And it was the story of Joseph being seen by his brothers, grabbed and thrown into the well. And it says in that Torah portion, behold, they say this about Joseph, behold, here cometh the dreamer, let us slay him, and see what becomes of his dreams. Well, powerfully, I said to them, those words from this week's Torah portion, as we look at Mount Nebo, that was used as a rhetorical, wonderful moment for King's last speech. Those words in the Torah are inscribed at the very place, the Lorraine Motel, where Martin Luther King was assassinated. If you go there today, in Memphis, go to Lorraine Motel and you will see words from the Torah. Behold, here cometh the dreamer, let us slay him and see what becomes of his dreams. At that moment, these two Jews, Israeli Jews, these two Americans, Christian, three Jews, black, white, all of these things that should have been lines that divided us. Here we all stood with the words of Martin Luther King still echoing in our memory, and the words of the Torah as well. And we were one. We were one. And that's the beauty of humanity. That actually is an American ideal and a Jewish ideal. That at the end of the day, the differences are not what matters. It's the principles, the ideals that tie us together. And here we were, in this desert, in Israel, celebrating the ideals of freedom and justice and God's promise that we should have one world, have the promised land. And so my approach to Israel issues, I have to say, come in a very different way than you might expect from the typical non-Jewish politician. To me, Judaism represents the dream that was eloquently put forth by Martin Luther King. And Israel also is a dream, an idea. And the interconnectedness, the interwoven understanding of humanity, that we are all part of the same fabric, is part of that understanding as well. That what happens to that democracy thousands of miles from here is directly impactful to what happens to this democracy here. And that we all must understand, as King said so eloquently, that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a common garment of destiny. Thank you very much.
That's a great inaugural speech.